All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing a deep dive that's going to completely change the way you build new features in React Native. We're going to walk through an entire playbook for crafting the perfect AI prompts so you can turn your ideas into code way, way faster. You know that feeling, right? When you're starting a new feature and it's like, here we go again, writing the same setup code for components or state management or API calls. It just eats up so much time. Well, what if you could just skip all that and focus only on the cool, unique logic? That's exactly what we're going to do today by mastering AI prompting. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basic anatomy of a perfect prompt. Then we're going to get our hands dirty building UI components, wrangling data, adding some handy utilities, and even writing tests. And we'll wrap it all up with a simple, powerful playbook you can start using literally today. Okay, section one. Look, before we even think about writing code, we have to understand what makes a prompt actually work. This is the foundation, Get this right, and you'll get predictable, high-quality results every time. It really just boils down to four key ingredients. First, the task. What is it you're actually trying to do? Second, tech constraints. What libraries, what frameworks, what language are you using? Third, the expected outcome. Do you need a component, a hook, a simple function? And finally, a little bit of context. Why do you need this? You nail these four things, and you are golden. All right, enough theory. Let's start building stuff. We're going to begin with the visual building blocks of pretty much any app, the UI components. We'll start with something everyone knows and then really ramp up the complexity. Every single app needs a good button, but we don't want just any old button, right? We want a reusable one that's smart. It needs to accept the right props, handle a loading state with a spinner, look disabled when it's busy, and of course, it has to be written in TypeScript. These are our non-negotiables. And this is how we turn that wish list into a crystal clear command for the AI. Notice how specific it is. We're not just saying, make a button. We're naming the exact component to use, touchability, and describing the behavior precisely. This is how you get code that you can actually use without a ton of refactoring. Okay, time to level up. A login form is a whole different beast. It's got fields, complex validation logic, state management, and all sorts of UX things to think about, like handling the keyboard. This table is basically our pre-prompt checklist. We're breaking down all the moving parts before we say a word to the AI. And boom, this is what it looks like when you assemble that entire checklist into one dense, super powerful prompt. We're calling out the libraries by name, we're defining the validation rules, the UX behavior for focusing the next input, and even specifying a library for keyboard handling. The more detail you bake in up front, the less time you waste later. So our app has a pretty UI, but right now it's just an empty shell. It doesn't actually do anything because it has no data. In this section, we're going to use AI prompts to breathe life into it, handling everything from simple API fetches to more complex state management. Here is a classic developer task, fetching some data. We need a function that hits a specific endpoint, it's got to use Axios, it should support a search parameter, and, this part is super important, it needs to return a nicely structured object that tells us if it's loading, if it failed, or if we have the data. The prompt for this is just so clean and direct. See, we're not just asking it to fetch users. We are defining the function's entire contract, its signature, its return shape, its error handling strategy, and even its architectural role as a reusable service method. It's a complete blueprint. Okay, now let's talk about global state. If you use Redux, you know the deal. The boilerplate for setting up an async slice can be, well, it can be a lot. So here, we're outlining the exact structure we want using Redux Toolkit, calling out the async thunk, the shape of our initial state, and those three crucial states of any async operation. And the prompt just nails it. By using the right keywords, Redux Toolkit, create async thunk, pending, fulfilled, rejected, we're speaking the library's native language. This helps the AI generate code that's not just correct, but idiomatic, so it'll slot perfectly into our existing Redux setup. But what about data that needs to be constantly up to date, like live scores or a dashboard? For that, we need a custom polling hook. So our requirements are clear. Give it a specific name, poll every 10 seconds, and, this is the big one, handle cleanup properly to prevent nasty memory leaks when the component unmounts. This prompt is an absolute masterclass. That one little instruction, handle cleanup on unmount, is so critical. Without it, you'd get a buggy hook that leaks memory all over the place.
This just goes to show you that prompting isn't only about going fast, it's about encoding best practices right into your requests.
So we've got a UI and we've got data flowing. But a professional-grade app needs more than that. It needs that final polish, you know? Those little helper functions and the quality checks that make an app reliable. Let's prompt for that fit and finish. A date formatting utility. Seems simple, but it's something every app needs, and it's easy to get wrong. Once again, specificity is everything. We define the inputs, the exact output format we want, the specific library to use, and the need to handle bad data gracefully. The prompt is short, sweet, and leaves absolutely no room for interpretation. By specifying the library and the error handling, we're making sure the code we get back is not only correct, but also robust and fits right in with our project's other dependencies. Building shiny new features is fun, but how do we make sure they don't break next week? We write tests, and guess what? We can prompt for those too. Here, we're laying out the exact steps for a unit test on our button. Render it, find it, click it, and then check that it did what it was supposed to do. For me, this is the real game changer. We're not just generating application code, we're generating the code that validates it. By specifying the testing libraries and the exact functions to use, like getByText and fireEvent.press, we can get a perfect test case generated in just a few seconds. Wow, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from UI all the way to testing. So now, let's boil all of this down into a simple, actionable playbook that you can keep in your back pocket anytime you sit down to code. And here it is. This is the slide you want to screenshot. This is your cheat sheet. If you want to get exactly the code you need every single time, your prompt has to be specific about these pillars. Be clear about your ultimate goal, the exact libraries, the language, the kind of code you need, and any constraints you have. Answer these questions in your prompt, and you'll be unstoppable. We've seen how to turn a precise set of requirements into functional, tested code for pretty much any part of a React Native app. The playbook is officially yours. So the only real question left is, what's that one feature you've been putting off that you can now build in a fraction of the time? Go give it a shot.